The wind from the north roared over the misty waters of the Bạch Đằng River. Beneath the cold surface, rows of sharp wooden stakes lay hidden, waiting in silence for the moment to awaken. On the shore, the gleaming armor of Tran warriors stood motionless like bronze statues amid the evening haze, their eyes fixed downstream, where the Mongol fleet surged forward, thundering like a coming storm. One side, an empire that had conquered all of Asia. The other, a small nation by the shores of the South Sea. Yet here, upon this river, the fate of two peoples would be decided. And when the war drums thundered like the voice of heaven, the tide began to ebb. The iron-tipped stakes of Đại Việt rose from the depths, the blades of the land itself now bared and waiting. Trần Hưng Đạo, the man who held the destiny of the nation in his hands, nodded softly. The flame of victory ignited. Bạch Đằng rose once more in fury. History turned a glorious page for Đại Việt, where wisdom and courage made even the hooves of the Mongol horses bow low. If you are passionate about uncovering the heroic pages of our past, the undying feats of our ancestors, then hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so together we may journey back through time to rekindle the spirit of Đại Việt, where every wave, every inch of land tells a story of courage and freedom.
The winter monsoon howled endlessly across the mountains of Yunnan, carrying with it the thunder of galloping hooves. Over the gray snowfields, the Yuan banners fluttered, tens of thousands of iron-clad horsemen gleaming beneath the cold sun. From the great capital of Khanbali, Kublai Khan had decreed, Đại Việt must be erased from the map of the south. An empire that had made all of Asia bow now gathered 100,000 elite soldiers, 100 massive warships advancing from three directions, like a black storm descending upon the land of Viet. From the north, Prince Tuat Hoan led the main force, white banners marked with the word Yuan, covering the horizon. From the west, the fearsome general Arik Kaya rode with 50,000 Mongol cavalry, cutting through forests and mountains, aiming straight for the Red River. From the eastern sea, Mai Yini and Fan Yi commanded their fleets from Qinzhou and Hainan, slicing through the waves. Three spears pointed at one single target, Đại Việt. Yet, before this storm, in a humble encampment by the banks of Van Kiep, the Grand Commander Trần Hưng Đạo sat calmly before the map of his homeland. He watched the oil lamp flicker in the wind and smiled gently. They are strong, but they do not understand this land. We do. Every blade of grass, every current of water, Đại Việt will fight with wisdom, not with brute force. No grand fortress was built. Instead, he divided his army into small mobile units, spreading them across Van Kiep, Thonglong, and Thiên Trường. Hidden detachments lay waiting among bamboo forests, rice fields, and riverbanks. The entire nation became one boundless battlefield. The people dismantled their homes, hid their grain, and retreated into the forests. The birds fell silent. The villages lay still. Đại Việt, silent to the point of terror. When General Arik Kaya crossed the border, he thought he had entered a land already conquered. Only forests, mountains, and an unnatural stillness greeted him. Has this land died? He muttered, gripping the hilt of his sword. But less than half a day later, as his troops crossed the Quy Hoa stream, the sky exploded. From both cliffs, boulders thundered down. Poisoned arrows darkened the heavens. Cries of "Shatat! Kill the Mongols!" echoed like thunder. From the forests, the Tran soldiers burst forth like a breaking flood. Mongol horses screamed, rearing and trampling their own riders. Banners shattered, formations collapsed. Arik Kaya roared, "I can't see them! They're everywhere!" The battle lasted but moments, long enough to dye the Quy Hoa stream red. And then, as swiftly as they came, the Tran warriors vanished into the forest. No footprints, no voices. Only the stench of blood and the wail of the wind through the rocks. Arik Kaya trembled. He knew he had walked into a trap, but there was no turning back. Far away, the torches of Yuan army still poured into Đại Việt like a breaking tide, unaware that each step forward was a step deeper into the snare. Meanwhile, on the eastern sea, the great sails of Umani's fleet cut through the waves. He stood proudly at the prow,
convinced that Thong Long was but days away. But then, in the dead of night, the skies above Van Don burst into flame. The brilliant naval commander Trong Kong Yu unleashed his fire ships, turning the enemy's vast grain fleet into an inferno. Zhang Wenhu, the supply general, fled in terror as food and munitions burned into a sea of fire. The East Sea roared with the clash of steel, the howl of wind, and the screams of the dying. Word of the disaster spread. Tuat Hon, enraged, smashed his bronze table and swore, "I will capture the Tron King alive and sacrifice him beneath my banner." But in Thong Long, King Tron Nyong Tong had already ordered a full withdrawal, taking with him the people, the food, and the boats, leaving behind an empty capital. A colossal trap now waited, its gates wide open. On the 4th day of the 12th lunar month, 1287, the gates of Thong Long swung wide. Tuat Hon galloped through, banners flying, weapons gleaming, but there was no one. No citizens, no soldiers, no sound. Only the wind howling through rooftops and doors creaking in the void. He threw back his head and roared, "Cowardly savages! Have they all fled?" But no one answered. From afar, hidden in the shadows of the Thiung Phúc forest, Chan Hung Dao smiled faintly. "No, we are not running. We are leading you to the place where you will kneel." The northern storm that thought it had descended upon Đại Việt was, in truth, being drawn into a whirlpool of death, a storm that bore the name Đại Việt itself. Thong Long, once the beating heart of a thriving nation, now lay silent, a desolate plain of ashes and ruins. Yuan banners fluttered over crumbling walls. The smoke from burned villages mingled with the pale dawn mist. Tuat Huan rode through the empty citadel, sword drawn, his eyes red with rage. This is the capital? A city with no people? A country without a soul? His voice echoed against the ruined stone, rebounding like the mocking laughter of heaven and earth. But he did not know that every inch of that emptiness was part of a masterful game crafted by the Grand Commander, Chan Hung Dao. From the moment the Yuan army advanced, the general ordered the scorched earth strategy, evacuating the populace, hiding the grain, burning the boats, and scattering spies across the land. Wherever the invaders went, they found only dry fields, shallow rivers, dark forests, and the suffocating silence of a waiting land. On the misty hills of Dongjiao, beneath the glimmer of dew on forest leaves, Chan Hung Dao gathered his generals. A great torch flickered between them. He pointed to the map and spoke, his voice calm, resonant, and heavy with resolve. They are many, but blind. They are strong, but weary. They believe in swift victory, but the farther they march, the deeper they sink. Let their own arrogance destroy them. The generals roared as one, "Yes, Commander." Their voices rolled through the forest like a rising tide. From that night onward, across the lands of Đại Việt, small bands of militia sprang into action, striking from the forests, vanishing like ghosts into the mist. They did not fight to win at once, but to bleed the enemy dry, to starve them, exhaust them, break their spirit. Each night in the Yuan encampments, campfires flickered weakly against hollow faces. Horses collapsed, men grew thin, and even the officers' shouts could not drown the moans of hunger and disease. Many nights Tuat Huan lay awake, listening to the wind outside his tent, hearing in every gust the phantom march of 1,000 Chan soldiers closing in. He knew he was losing control, yet still he bit down and commanded, "Find the king of Đại Việt, bring him to me." But far to the east, another storm was already rising. In the island waters of Van Don, the once disgraced general Chan Kiangzu, stripped of rank for past mistakes, now returned for a battle of redemption. He intercepted the massive supply fleet of the Yuan commander Zhang Wenhu. That night at Van Don, the sky was as black as ink, save for the fiery glow of flaming arrows soaring through the darkness.
When Kang Du shouted, "Set fire!" the sky flared. The East Sea itself seemed to burn. Flame licked the sails and spread to the grain holds. ships erupted in blasts. Cries of men, the screams of horses, and the howl of the wind braided together into a hymn of hell. The invaders' great invasion suddenly lost its lifeblood. When the news reached Tuat Han, he smashed his table, drew his sword, and cleaved the tent pole. No supplies, no people, no enemy. What kind of war is this? He roared in despair. But while the Yuan forces sank into chaos, the people of Đại Việt awoke like a living body rousing to action. Every villager, every soldier, every torch in the night became a single rising wave. They needed no speeches. They knew the homeland was being tested. At Ha Lung, Trần Hưng Đạo stood before his camp, the firelight carving lines of wind and weather into his face. He looked north, where moonlight silvered the water, and said, "They are strong because we fear. If we are not afraid, they will weaken. When they tire, we strike. When the tide withdraws, we kill. When heaven helps, we win." A cold wind passed. The torchlight shivered. Beyond the horizon, Tuat Han still trudged deeper into the maze, unaware that each step, each breath, each beat of sweat carried him closer to the deadly stake field of Bạch Đằng, the place where history had already appointed the invaders' fate to drown. Dawn on the 9th day of the 3rd lunar month, year Mount T, 1288. Bạch Đằng River lay wrapped in white mist, its surface calm as a colossal mirror. But beneath that stillness, thousands of iron-tipped tamarind stakes, sharpened and hidden, waited. They stood like the silent army of the motherland, ready for the single command from their unparalleled commander, Hung Dao Dai Vuong, Tran Tuac Tung. On the ridge of Trang Keng, with the salt wind in his face, Hung Dao looked out over the flowing water. His gaze was blade-sharp, ocean-deep. His hand gripped the sword hilt, carved with the words Sat Tak. Below, the elite captains took their stations. Pham Nguyen Wao with a band of death ambushers along both banks. Yet Kio in Datsiong submerged and breath held waiting under the water. Nguyen Guai commanding the Holy Guard to block the lower reaches. Tran Guang Khai and Tran Nyat Wen Yet ready with archers along the forested slopes. On the river, the light Tran warboats moved slowly, feigning retreat to lure the enemy into the stake field. From afar, the drums of the Yuan Mongol armada thundered. Omaye's great fleet, over 100 warships, advanced, roaring toward the river mouth. The prows of the Yuan warships sliced through the waves, banners snapping in the wind, and the soldiers' arrogant cries rolled across the river like thunder. At the prow stood Ma Yi, eyes blazing with pride. "These southern barbarians are weak. One battle and they'll be swept away." But he did not know he was sailing straight into the trap of time itself, where every pulse of the tide was the ally of Đại Việt. At noon, the tide rose high, concealing the deadly field of stakes beneath the surface. Trần Hưng Đạo lifted his hand. The light Tran boats turned and fled, feigning terror. Ma Yi roared, "After them! Leave no one alive!" War drums and horns erupted. Hundreds of Yuan ships surged forward like a stampede of iron beasts. Waves split. The river boiled white. And then the moment came. As the sun began to sink, the tide withdrew. Sharp iron-tipped stakes of Bạch Đằng slowly emerged, glinting like 1,000 blades of steel. On Mount Trang Keng, Trần Hưng Đạo drew his sword, raised it high, and shouted, "The hour of Đại Việt has come! Sound the drums!" The command drums thundered like the wrath of heaven. From both banks, Trang Quang Hai's archers loosed fire arrows. Flames rippled across the river's surface, turning water to fire. Downstream, Nguyen Quai's fleet charged in, blocking all escape. Upstream, Pham Nguyen Lao and Tran Nhật Drat struck, driving their ships straight into the enemy line. The cry, "Sak Tat! Kill the Mongols!" rose like a storm, drowning even the roar of the sea. Yuan warships jammed together midstream, unable to turn. Large vessels ran aground. Smaller ones collided and splintered. Beneath the surface, Yet Kiu and Datsuang burst up from the depths, pouring holes in the enemy hulls, setting fire from below. Flames roared, smoke thickened. The air reeked of burning wood, blood, and molten iron. On deck, Yuan soldiers screamed and leapt into the river, only to be impaled on the iron stakes below. One terrified officer cried out, "Heavens! The river grows spikes! This is witchcraft!" Ma Yi tried to stay calm, shouting orders to turn the ships, but the tide fell too fast. His own flagship ran aground, tilting as fire closed in on every side. From the mountain, Trần Hưng Đạo looked down, his voice deep and steady. "The tide is my army.
The stakes are the swords of the land, and I am the will of the people of Đại Việt. The battle raged until sunset. The Bạch Đằng River became a sea of fire, glowing crimson beneath the dying light.
Corpses of ships, men, and horses drifted toward the banks, floating, tangled together in a mournful carpet of death. The finest army of the Mongol Empire utterly destroyed. When the drums finally fell silent, Trần Hưng Đạo remained still, watching the smoke rise from the river. There was no cheering, no drunken triumph, only quiet words to his aides. Today, the river runs red with blood, but tomorrow it will be blue again. For the people of Viet fight only when peace must be protected. That day, the Bạch Đằng River carried not only the scent of smoke, but the scent of freedom, the scent of a nation that had learned to stand tall. As the sun sank, its crimson light lingered on the water. The battlefield, still veiled in ash and flame, was littered with wrecked ships and drifting corpses, mingled with broken spears, shattered armor, and the blood of invaders who once trampled half the world beneath their hooves. When word reached Tho Toan, the Yuan commander-in-chief, he froze in disbelief. The name Bạch Đằng, absent from his war plans, had become the graveyard of an empire's pride. Cold sweat slid down his temples. He understood then. The Mongol Empire had met its ruin in Đại Việt. But he could not turn back. He could not return in shame. "Withdraw!" he shouted, his voice trembling through the night like the cry of a wounded beast. He split the remnants of his forces. One column, led by Chic Đô Ni, turned toward Chi Long, hoping to escape swiftly through the mountains. The other, under Tho Toan himself, moved toward Noi Bang Pass, a treacherous route but close to the frontier. Along the narrow mountain paths, Yuan banners hung in tatters. Armor was caked with mud, and the labored breaths of horses blended with the groans of the dying. But Trần Hưng Đạo was waiting. From Trang King, he sent the final command. They flee, spare none. They weaken, strike. Đại Việt leaves no shadow of the invader behind. At Chi Long, Trang Yat Nut had already set the ambush. In the mist-shrouded valley, as the Mongol cavalry wound through the gorge, the war drums thundered. Shouts erupted like thunder, flaming arrows rained down like falling stars, horses shrieked, men screamed, rocks tumbled from the cliffs. Within moments, thousands of Yuan soldiers were crushed and buried. Chic Đô Ni cried for retreat, but it was useless. The Chi Long Valley ran red, the clash of steel and stone echoing through the night like the weeping of a defeated army. When Tho Toan heard the news, his face turned pale. But before him lay only one path, Noi Bang Pass, and behind him, an ocean of fire closing in. On the 11th day of the 5th month, 1288, the Mongol army marched into the mist-covered mountains, unaware they had entered a Bạch Đằng on land. A horn blared across the cliffs, thunder rolling from peak to peak, and from both sides the Tron warriors descended like a storm. Stones, arrows, and fire rained down, the sky burned, the earth roared. The invaders screamed in chaos, horses trampled men, and the cry, "Sat that! Kill the invaders!" echoed through the mountains like the voice of the gods. Terrified, Prince Tho Toan fled, hiding in a copper tube to escape, a shame that history would never forget. The Battle of Noi Bang ended in ruin. Rain mixed with blood. Streams ran red as the Mongol army broke apart in despair. By the 19th day, the last of them crossed the border, starved, broken, and defeated. Behind them, Đại Việt stood tall amid the smoke, unbowed and eternal. Upon a hill, Trần Hưng Đạo gazed northward and spoke, "Đại Việt is small, but its people's hearts are vast. Our strength lies not in swords, but in those who dare to die for their homeland." The wind whispered through the bamboo, the spirits of fallen warriors still marching in its breath. At dawn, the mist lay heavy on the Bạch Đằng River, where sharpened wooden stakes still gleamed beneath the morning sun, 1,000 blades carved into the memory of the land. And from the river's quiet depths rose the undying spirit of Đại Việt, spreading through mountains and skies alike, forever unyielding. The war had ended, yet across Đại Việt, every heart knew they had forged an immortal epic. On the riverbank, mothers, wives, and children embraced in tears, for this victory belonged not to kings or generals, but to the people. When news of triumph reached Thang Long, Emperor Chan Yun Tong journeyed to Bạch Đằng to give thanks to heaven and earth. He knelt by the river, his voice rising with the wind. "Thanks to heaven, to earth, and to the people. The blood shed today shall become the foundation of tomorrow's freedom." Beside him, Trần Hưng Đạo bowed low, tears falling into the sacred soil. The tears of a hero who knew the true cost of peace. Amid the ashes, the sounds of hammers and children's laughter rose again. Đại Việt was reborn, not by command, but by the indomitable will of its people. The Mongol invaders would never again dare to cross its borders. Even Kublai Khan, conqueror of Asia and Europe, was forced to admit there is a nation in the south, small yet unyielding. From No Quin's victory in 938 to Trần Hưng Đạo triumph in 1288, the Bạch Đằng River became the meeting place of water and sky, where history met the soul of a nation. 1,000 years later, the Vietnamese still stand by that river, hearing in the wind the echo of Sat Tat, the cry of freedom. Bạch Đằng is no longer a battlefield, but a witness, a solemn reminder that liberty is not a gift, but a debt paid in courage and blood. As the sun sets, the river burns red, not with blood, but with freedom, pride, and rebirth. And it still flows, carrying an eternal vow upon its waves. This land of Đại Việt, through all the ages, shall never bow.